Have you ever wondered why some people act in strange, almost inexplicable ways? Could there be a hidden reason behind their peculiar mannerisms? Well, today we're diving deep into a topic that might shed some light on this mystery, the weird mannerisms of people who have been abused by narcissists. Stick around, because what you're about to learn could change the way you see and understand these behaviors forever. 1. Introduction to Narcissistic Abuse. Narcissistic abuse isn't just about the physical or verbal altercations. It's a complex, insidious form of manipulation that leaves deep, often invisible scars. When someone is consistently subjected to the whims of a narcissist, they may develop behaviors and mannerisms that seem odd to the outside world, but are actually coping mechanisms forged in the crucible of their trauma. 2. Hyper-vigilance, the constant state of alert. Imagine living your life like you're always walking on eggshells. For many survivors of narcissistic abuse, this isn't just a figure of speech, it's their daily reality. Hypervigilance is a state of extreme alertness, where the person is constantly on the lookout for potential threats or signs of danger. This heightened state of awareness can manifest in many ways, such as frequently looking over their shoulder, being easily startled, or having difficulty relaxing even in safe environments. 3. People-pleasing, the unseen desperation. One of the most common mannerisms of someone who has been abused by a narcissist is an overwhelming need to please others. This isn't just about being nice, it's about survival. People-pleasing behaviors can include constantly seeking approval, avoiding conflict at all costs, and bending over backward to accommodate others. This desperate need to be liked and accepted often stems from years of being made to feel inadequate and unworthy by their abuser. 4. Self-doubt and indecisiveness. Have you ever noticed someone who just can't seem to make a decision, no matter how trivial? This can be a direct result of narcissistic abuse. Narcissists are masters at making their victims doubt their own judgment and abilities. Over time, this relentless undermining can erode a person's self-confidence, leaving them paralyzed with indecision. They might second-guess everything they do, constantly seeking validation from others before making any move. 5. Apologizing excessively. "I'm sorry" becomes a mantra for those who have suffered narcissistic abuse. They might apologize for things that aren't their fault or for things that don't even warrant an apology. This incessant apologizing is a conditioned response, ingrained by the abuser's constant blaming and shaming. It's a way for the survivor to preemptively avoid conflict or criticism, even when none is warranted. 6. Difficulty trusting others. Trust is a fragile thing, especially for someone who has been betrayed by a narcissist. Survivors often struggle with trusting others, even those who have never given them a reason to doubt. They may be wary of new relationships, both personal and professional, always fearing that they will be hurt again. This lack of trust can lead to social isolation and difficulty forming close bonds. 7. Need for control. To regain a sense of safety and predictability, some survivors develop a need to control their environment and the people in it. This isn't about being bossy or domineering, it's a way to cope with the chaos they've experienced. They might become perfectionists or exhibit obsessive-compulsive behaviors, meticulously planning and organizing their lives to prevent any surprises or disappointments. 8. Emotional numbness. In the face of ongoing trauma, shutting down emotionally can be a protective mechanism. Survivors of narcissistic abuse often display a flat affect or seem emotionally detached. This numbness can be a way to avoid feeling the intense pain and confusion caused by the abuse. While it may seem like they are uncaring or aloof, this is actually a sign of deep emotional distress. 9. Mirroring others. To avoid conflict and blend in, survivors might mirror the behaviors, attitudes, and opinions of those around them. This chameleon-like behavior is a way to avoid standing out and becoming a target again. By mimicking others, they hope to gain acceptance and avoid the wrath they once faced. 10. Over-explaining. Ever met someone who feels the need to explain every single detail, even when it's not necessary? This can be another telltale sign of narcissistic abuse. Over-explaining is a way to preempt criticism and justify their actions to avoid being attacked or belittled. It stems from a place of deep-seated insecurity and fear of judgment. 11. Avoiding eye contact. Eye contact can be incredibly intimidating for someone who has been constantly criticized and belittled. Avoiding eye contact can be a subconscious way of protecting themselves from perceived judgment or hostility. It's a small, seemingly insignificant behavior that can actually speak volumes about a person's past experiences. 12. Frequent self-deprecation. Making fun of oneself or engaging in self-deprecating humor can be a coping mechanism for survivors of narcissistic abuse. By putting themselves down first, they try to preempt any insults or criticisms from others. This behavior reflects a deeply ingrained belief that they are not worthy or good enough. 13. Inability to accept compliments. When compliments are few and far between and criticisms are a constant, it can become difficult for someone to accept positive feedback. Survivors of narcissistic abuse might dismiss compliments or even react with suspicion, thinking there's an ulterior motive. This inability to accept praise is rooted in the skewed perception of self-worth instilled by their abuser. 14. Overly protective of personal boundaries. After experiencing repeated boundary violations, survivors often become fiercely protective of their personal space and boundaries. They might react strongly to any perceived infringement, no matter how minor. This heightened sensitivity is a defense mechanism to ensure they are never taken advantage of again. 15. Constant need for reassurance. Seeking constant reassurance can be another way survivors cope with the self-doubt and insecurity instilled by their abuser. They might frequently ask for validation or need repeated affirmations of their worth and decisions. This need for reassurance is a way to counteract the pervasive feelings of inadequacy and self-doubt. 16. Codependent tendencies. Codependency is a common result of narcissistic abuse. Survivors might find themselves in relationships where they prioritize others' needs over their own, often to their own detriment. This pattern of behavior is a direct reflection of the dynamics they experienced with their abuser, where their needs were consistently devalued and ignored. 17. Difficulty expressing emotions. Emotional expression can be a significant challenge for those who have endured narcissistic abuse. They might struggle to articulate their feelings or feel uncomfortable showing vulnerability. This difficulty stems from years of having their emotions invalidated or weaponized against them. 18. Avoidance of conflict. Conflict can be terrifying for someone who has faced the wrath of a narcissist. They might go to great lengths to avoid any disagreements or confrontations, fearing it will lead to emotional or verbal abuse. This avoidance can result in passive-aggressive behaviors or a tendency to bottle up their true feelings. 19. Overly self-critical. Survivors of narcissistic abuse often internalize the harsh criticisms and unrealistic expectations of their abuser. They become their own worst critic, constantly berating themselves for not being perfect. This self-criticism can lead to a negative self-image and even depression. 20. Seeking external validation. When your self-worth has been systematically dismantled, you start looking for validation outside of yourself. Survivors might become overly reliant on others for affirmation and approval. This need for external validation can drive them to seek praise and recognition in their personal and professional lives, sometimes at great personal cost. 21. Fear of abandonment. Narcissistic abuse often includes manipulation tactics that make the victim feel they are unlovable and destined to be abandoned. This deep-seated fear can manifest in clingy or needy behavior, where the survivor constantly seeks reassurance that they won't be left alone. This fear can make it difficult for them to form healthy, independent relationships. 22. Difficulty saying no. Saying no can feel almost impossible for someone who has been conditioned to always say yes. Survivors might struggle to assert their boundaries or refuse requests, fearing backlash or rejection. This difficulty stems from years of being made to feel that their needs and desires were less important than those of the narcissist. 23. Isolation and withdrawal. To protect themselves from further harm, some survivors retreat into isolation. They might withdraw from social activities, avoid making new friends, or distance themselves from loved ones. This isolation is a way to avoid potential threats and create a safe space where they can heal. 24. Perfectionism. Perfectionism can be another coping mechanism for survivors of narcissistic abuse. By striving to be perfect, they hope to avoid criticism and gain approval. However, this relentless pursuit of perfection can be exhausting and unattainable, leading to burnout and further self-criticism. 25. Difficulty in romantic relationships. The scars of narcissistic abuse can deeply affect a survivor's ability to form healthy romantic relationships. They might struggle with trust, intimacy, and communication, often carrying the baggage of their past into their present relationships. This difficulty can result in a pattern of unhealthy relationships or avoidance of romantic connections altogether. Conclusion. Understanding the weird mannerisms of people abused by narcissists is crucial in recognizing the profound impact of this form of abuse. These behaviors are not just quirks or oddities, they are survival mechanisms developed in response to deep psychological trauma. By recognizing and empathizing with these mannerisms, we can better support survivors on their journey to healing and reclaiming their lives. So, the next time you encounter someone with these peculiar behaviors, remember there's often a painful story behind them. Be patient, be kind, and most importantly, be understanding. They're not just coping with their past, they're bravely navigating their way towards a healthier future.